All right, let's go ahead and get started here. Tonight we are going to review and discuss a little bit about the Threatened and Endangered Species Project. So let's first take a few minutes, talk a little bit about our objectives, and do a quick review, and then we'll talk about the project. Obviously, the crux of this assignment deals with the lesson that goes along with threatened and endangered species. Hopefully, by the time you're finished with the lesson, you're finished with the project, you'll be able to define threatened and endangered species. You'll be able to identify the causes of species extinction, especially in relationship to the project that you're going to do. Um, Hopefully, you'll be able to describe and really reflect on human activities as they relate to species survival, and then really take a look at fragmentation of habitats and explain why some species are better suited to survive when the environment's changes compared to others. So those are really the main issues of the project. So let's take a few minutes here and talk a little bit about really endangered species. So the lesson really gives a nice overview of threatened and endangered species. It talks about the extinction is really being reflected as a loss of biodiversity to our planet. I really encourage you to check out that Endangered Species International website. You can roll over regions on the map to learn about species that lived in one parts of the world. So please pay close attention. When we're talking about threatened and endangered species, remember, um, a species that is threatened when it is still abundant in its natural habitat, it's just due to declining numbers. Okay, a species is endangered essentially when it has only a few individuals left and it's going to soon become extinct. Okay, um, for example, let's talk about the Bengal tiger. Okay, the Bengal tiger is a great example of an organism that it exists in isolation. It's vulnerable to predators. It's vulnerable to competition. It's vulnerable to disease. So what has occurred is over time there's been declining numbers. We look at the Bengal tiger as not only being threatened but is now becoming an endangered species because of these factors that occur. Okay, some of the things that I want you to think about just to review the lesson when you're talking about environmental factors that contribute towards threatened and endangered species. Habitat destruction. As human populations grow, we habitat loss and degradation is one of the leading threats to biodiversity on our planet. And of course, one of the things that you looked at earlier in the year, pollution. Okay, pollution also leads to species becoming vulnerable and extinct. Okay, pollution can degrade air quality, it can degrade water quality, it can damage our food sources, and it can harm living tissue. So as a whole, um, these things play an important part in protecting and preserving, species on our planet. So that was just a little quick review of the lesson, and now let's talk a little bit about how this relates to the project. So, your project on this threatened and endangered species was essentially to conduct some independent research, and they gave you two specific animals, two very different animals, to really do some research on. So, the project wants you to do some independent research on the raccoon and the mountain gorilla. Okay, and it suggests that you do your research online or from library books and magazines. Now, I know a lot of you probably don't have books and magazines laying around, so obviously the internet is going to be your best source for research. My suggestion is this: please do not use Wikipedia as your main source of information for this assignment. Okay, there are tons of other websites out there, and I'm going to provide you with a couple in links to this when I post the video, but I would strongly advise not using that. Okay, so for example, let's talk a little bit about first. I would strongly recommend here's the Washington Nature Mapping Program. It's an organizational website that is accurate, it is up to date, and it portrays accurate quality information. Another example here would be the Animal Diversity website. This is sponsored by the University of Michigan Museum of Zoology. Again, this one gives some really great information. You can use this for both the raccoon or the mountain gorilla if you'd like. Gives you a whole bunch of information which you're going to need to address in your paper. And then finally, here also the African Wildlife Foundation, another great example, doing some research. This is just an example that you can use for the mountain gorilla to get up to date information with regards to that. So there are other websites out there. You're certainly welcome to use those, but again, please be careful. I'd be using .edu, .org websites instead of Wikipedia's. Okay, so back to the project. Okay, the project wants you to do some research about raccoons and gorillas. So these websites that I've provided you, in addition to what you use, can certainly help you answer these questions. Now, how do you do this? You can do this in a Word document, is probably the easiest way to do it. You can copy and paste this table into Word, and you can fill in the table with the answers to this questions. Okay, what I'm looking for is exactly what they ask. It doesn't have to be specific. It could be bullet pointed. It could be short 1 to 2 word answers, or you can set up a table completely different to answer those questions in any way that you like it. If you fancy more formalized writing. Okay, so that's part one. Part two, what you can do is they ask 2 specific questions, okay? And these I kind of want more in a little bit more of a formal paragraph, okay? It talks and it asks what species is more vulnerable to extinction, and it give me at least 3 reasons why. In addition to those websites, there are other websites out there that you can find which species obviously is more vulnerable. And I think you should probably just in listening to the earlier part of this little discussion as to what species would be more vulnerable. And give 3 reasons why, and they need to be credible reasons, and you need to make sure that you cite those credible reasons, both parenthetically, meaning within the text, as well as at the end, okay? And then which species would be most harmed by environmental change that would wipe out one of its area of its habitats. So again, thinking about how these animals, after you've done your research, how they respond to environmental pressures. If something changed in their day-to-day activity, which one would be more affected and why? Okay, so that's really what this project is looking for. Can you do some research and can you explain why one organism is more vulnerable than another? Okay. So the submission requirements, obviously, a full chart, or if you want to do that in a written out paragraph form, again, I'm okay with either or. And then the second part to this is really the writing piece, the paragraph responses to the 2 questions that I'm going to be looking for. Okay, so what you're going to be doing essentially is 2 parts. You can do it in a Word doc, or you can do it in a Word doc and copy it, paste it down below. It doesn't matter to me. And then what I'll be looking for is, did you correctly answer the questions? Is it accurate? Did you proofread? I'm looking for spelling, grammar, and punctuation, especially at this point in the year. Good sentence structure, and anywhere between 4 to 6 sentences a paragraph. And certainly, if you write more, which some of you do, that's cool. I like to read, so I'll be looking at that, and I'll be looking at the accuracy of the sources that you're going to be using. Okay, .edu, .org websites. Okay, again, shy away from that Wikipedia, because again, remember, anybody can edit Wikipedia. All right. So that's the project. If you have any other questions, certainly come on into the VO this week and we can talk about it. And if you have any other questions, you can certainly reach out and email me. And I look forward to talking with you next week about another project. Have a good week, everyone.